Talvez você já conheça a gente. Ainda não? Bem, nós somos a Novo Nordisk. Nós ressignificamos os rumos na pesquisa sobre obesidade. Não é à toa. Temos mais de 100 anos de pesquisa em saúde em busca de inovações. Controle de peso ainda é um desafio. Mas agora milhões de pessoas no mundo todo podem trilhar um caminho para uma vida mais saudável. Novo Nordisk. Um novo norte contra a obesidade.
Today on CityCast Portland, we're talking about the federal government investigating several companies in our CEI Hub, reported UFO sightings in Eugene skies, and the drama surrounding Portland's public campaign finance management. Joining me on this year's final Friday News Roundup are CityCast Director of Digital Strategy, Bryan Vance, and our very own executive producer, John Notarianni. It's Friday, December 20th. I'm Claudia Meza, and this is what Portland's talking about. Welcome, everyone, to the Friday News Roundup. Bryan, John, thank you for hanging out with me this morning.
Hey, Claudia.
Hey, Claudia.
Final roundup of the year.
Bryan, there's no other guest we'd rather have for our final 2024 roundup.
That means so much to me. I appreciate that. I do feel like the fifth Beatle in a great way. It's a great feeling to be the fifth Beatle. None of the pressure, all of the perks. So
arguably the mastermind as well.
Yeah.
There we go. I'll take it.
This is great. So if anyone gets mad, I'm just going to be like, well, we'll talk to Bryan.
Yeah, just blame me. It's my fault.
Well, I'll drive to Monteville and figure it out. For those of you new to the show, today is the day we break down some of the biggest local stories of the week with some of the best and brightest journalists in town. But before we jump into the news, I usually ask an opening question so our listeners can get to know our guests a little better. And today's opening question is related to a press release TriMet sent over a few days ago. They announced a partnership with Providence Park, where now if you are going to a soccer game, either the Thorns or the Timbers in the 2025-2026 season, all you have to do is show your pass and you'll get a free bus ride there or max ride there. Yeah.
That's so cool.
And they're also looking to expand it to, I think they're going to also do the concerts.
Oh, yeah, because that's now an outdoor concert venue in the summer.
Yeah.
Pretty cool, right?
Whoa.
Post Malone 2025. Here we come.
John, I would love to see you at a Post Malone show.
You have to get a face tattoo before you go, though, John.
Oh, my God.
I wouldn't turn down a free Post Malone ticket. I might not buy one myself.
And I would love to see the face tattoo.
I will pay for your face tattoo.
That'd be so cool if they had, like, adult face painting at Post Malone. And you could just get ridiculous.
That would actually be epic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Face, okay. Anyhow, the opening question, which I'm now bummed is not about which face tattoo you would get. So if you had the power to grant a free bus ride to any other activity, and you don't have to prove it, because you don't have to think about the mechanics of like, well, how would they prove they would be doing this thing? Like, what would it be? Like, what would you get TriMet to agree to? And I can go first if you need just a little time to think about it.
I already know.
Oh, shoot.
This drives me nuts.
Yeah.
The Mount Tabor Adult Soapbox Derby, it is just chaos getting there every summer.
Yes.
Very smart.
Whether you want to walk or bike or whatever, it's just madness. And if we could just like say, no cars are allowed anywhere around it, but you can all take the bus and you all get there. Hell yeah. I don't know how we can make this happen, but I'm now determined to make this happen. I'm just going to reach out to TriMet after this.
It's a really good idea because, yeah, that neighborhood is I can't imagine.
It already sucks when there isn't an event going on.
The streets are so narrow.
It's not made for driving and biking because it's like there's no bike lanes. So yeah, can we just get a bus to take us all there and drop us off right at the foot of the mountain? That'd be great.
What about you, John?
I'd say free bus rides to Revolution Hall.
Ooh.
Anytime I'm going to a show, it's always like, well, like I don't want to drive my car and like have a beer at the show or like a couple beers at a show and then drive home. So I think like a free bus ride to and from the venue would be great. And it's also like close enough to other things that if they're not verifying it, you could just be like, yeah, I'm going to Revolution Hall and get that free bus ride. And then like walk to wherever you're headed on the Central East Side.
That's a good idea.
That's a nice little hack.
Yeah. Okay, mine is less activity and more just like a section of our community that should get it. I think all single parents should just get free bus fare.
Actually, that's super practical.
Yeah. No, I just feel like, because I was going to say single moms, but I was like, no, there's single dads. I've not met one, but there are. And like, I can't imagine having to live life as a single parent, trying to navigate so many things of your child's schedule and like your car breaks down. And it would be so great if the city was like, we got your back today, kid, you know?
Yeah.
like we got you.
I like that John and I are both like selfishly thinking about how to make our lives better.
No.
And Claudia's like, actually, this is a great idea for society at large.
Claudia, why are you always trying to improve society?
I set you guys up. That was my fault.
But that's actually a really smart idea. And it's like, I know a lot of people have been pushing to make TriMet free for everyone. I got to be honest, I don't think that's going to happen anytime in the next few decades. But this actually seems like something that we could pull off.
Yeah.
Though we'd probably need another tax for it, let's be honest. So...
All of a sudden we're like, well...
Claudia's face just then.
Yeah, I'll walk my shit back. I don't know. All right. Well, thank you both for your answers. On to the news of the week. Bryan, what you got?
All right, so I have a story from Oregonian reporter Goje Wozniak about the EPA launching an investigation into some companies who run fuel storage tanks along the Willamette River here in Portland. The Zenith Energy Terminal, a thing that Portlanders, I feel like, have been up in arms about for, a decade now, it seems like.
Yeah.
So basically, the EPA kicked off an investigation, actually in several cities this fall, Portland being one of them, of facilities like this, where they are storing fuel in tankers to be shipped, to be, strategic storage, whatever. They are required by federal law to limit the release of certain organic compounds that come from things like gasoline and diesel and other fuels. Because when those compounds get into the air, they have really negative effects on air quality. They actually create smog, that awful thing that LA has dealt with for decades. What's interesting about this is while they're not releasing specifics yet, they have signaled that at least in some of the sites that they're monitoring, which includes Portland, they are saying they have already found violations of the rules. And I'm just really curious to hear, what was your first reaction when you saw this? Because it seems like Zenith in particular is always bubbling up in the news. I mean, didn't they just have an air quality permit canceled or revoked or something like that recently?
Yeah. Well, first it was paused. And then the DEQ, they did an unannounced inspection because of public pressure, because they found some other things,
Right.
And when they went in, they were just like, that's when they hit the pause button and they thought about it. But then they're like, actually, you have to essentially go back to the city and reapply for a land use agreement.
Wow.
So now it's starting back from zero, which is, I wonder what they found,
Yeah. I mean, this is pure speculation here, but like if that happened with, Oregon DEQ, and then EPA is doing this investigation, which by the way is going to run for a whole year. So for a whole year, companies at sites around the country that they're monitoring have to provide weekly data to the EPA about the amounts of these organic compounds in the air around their facilities. So like someone's actually watching and keeping score right now. And I think that's really interesting. I do not pay too much attention to the whole Zenith energy thing and that whole compound. So this was the first time I actually realized just how large this is. There's something like 400 storage tanks that hold like 350 million gallons of fuel right there on the river. I can't imagine that even if they are following the rules.
Do you not listen to our show?
I do, but
all we talk about. I swear that's all we talk about.
The scale. I need to see numbers written down is what it really is.
Okay, I get it. You're like, it's a reading comprehension thing. You guys I talk a lot.
Yeah.
I get it.
You throw a lot of numbers at me.
It is interesting though. Like obviously like Zenith is a big part of this. They've been having trouble with these things, but like it's not just Zenith. Like looking at the list of companies, it's like Chevron, Kinder Morgan, Shell, like every sort of like multinational petroleum company in the world seems to be on this list.
Yeah, and I was actually when I heard that the feds are coming, I was like, oh man, is it because the DEQ like hit the Batman alarm or something? Like what's happening? But then I read like, oh, they've been planning this for a while. It's just like Zenith's luck that everyone is now monitoring them.
Yeah.
But at first I tried looking into this, but I couldn't really figure out what they mean by monitoring, because it seemed like they were like, okay, guys, collect the samples and bring it to us, is what the EPA was saying. And I was like, oh, we're just going to trust Zenith?
Yeah. That does seem to be the way that it's running, is like it's self-monitored, self-reported.
And I mean, okay. The DEQ literally paused Zenith's air quality permit application because they found something shady when they went in for that inspection, right? And what they found, I don't know, like I said it once, but what they found was that during the application process of this air quality, which, by the way, it's not just Zenith, like pretty much everyone in the CEI Hub has to get this air quality approval from the DEQ. It's part of the Clean Air Act, which is federal. It's just the way the Clean Air Act works is that it's a state level monitoring system, you know? So when the feds come in, that's like a big deal. You know, that's just like more people looking at you. So essentially when they were applying for this air quality permit, DEQ discovered that Zenith had installed a valve and pipes at a dock owned by another company and had used the dock for 3 years without telling state regulators, meaning that they weren't reporting the full extent of their emissions for like that amount of time.
Whoa.
And do you think they did that like as an, oops, I had no idea. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
So these are the people that like the feds are like, all right, guys, give us your reports. Like, I mean, if anyone listening is like, no, that's not how it's going to be. This is why it's accountable. Like, I want to hear it. But like, I don't know. I wouldn't trust him as far as I can smell him, you know?
Which is all the way to St. John's, apparently.
Which is all the way to my goddamn house.
Apparently pretty far.
I mean, the reporting did say that the monitoring results are going to be made publicly available. So, like, that leads me to be curious. Like, I see you, like, immediately being skeptical. But, like, heaven forbid the other end of it, that this reporting does come out and it says, oh, by the way, your air is poison.
See, John,
then what happens?
No.
Right.
EPA said that it would share the results with the public, but that monitoring data would not show the concentrations of pollutants in the community. I'm reading it here. The concentrations that people are exposed to or the potential impacts to public health. So what's the fucking point?
I mean, it does seem to be like less about telling us how dangerous it is and more about the EPA like acknowledging that there is a problem is the way I'm looking at it.
But then what's going to happen?
Right. That
We're
is
all just
unclear.
going to be like, oh, okay, cool.
That's unclear. Like that nothing that I have seen reported so far says like what the intended outcome is of this investigation. As I said, it's not just happening in Portland. It's happening in more than a dozen sites around the country. I would like to think that they have an end goal in mind, whether that is increased enforcement or maybe even revoking some permits, but it is really, really unclear at this point what that means. And like you said, Claudia, it's the added wrinkle of this may be a federal investigation and a federal law, but it's actually implemented at a state level. So you have a bunch of different agencies involved who are all going to want to have a say in whatever happens at the end of this investigation.
This might be over-optimistic of me, but I also just wonder if just the threat that, like, okay, the feds are watching, we're actually paying attention to this could mean that somewhere where they might have otherwise taken a shortcut, they might be like, you know what, maybe this isn't the time to unveil that balloon of toxic chemicals into the air, you know?
I mean, for how long, you know?
Right. My thing is like, yes, normally I think you're right, John, except we just elected Trump. And Elon Musk is determined to destroy every federal regulation that ever existed. So it's like the EPA may get gutted in the coming months, and all intentions to do something good here that may be what you're saying, John, could go out the window.
Yeah. And Lee Zeldin, who is going to be the new director of the EPA, he's said that he is very interested in deregulation decisions as well.
Smog for all.
This could be the last days of disco for the EPA for a couple years. Yeah.
Oh my God. I hate this. I actually, last night, I had one of those like spirals where I realized how much I hated Musk. Do you know what I mean? Like when you think about it, and I was just like, oh, I hate that guy.
It just keeps building and building.
Well, Bryan, thank you so much for going through that. John, thank you for being optimistic.
Yeah, I'll throw it in there every once in a while.
Yeah, very uncharacteristic.
Just in the holiday spirit, Claudia. What can I say?
Well, let's take a quick break here. And when we come back, more headlines of the week.
Bom dia, óbvias! Aqui é a Marcela Ceribelli e vim contar pra vocês que eu tô participando do Amigo Secreto de Podcasters do TikTok. Eu tirei o Eduardo do The News, que me acompanha em tantas manhãs por aqui. O meu presente vai ser o livro Olhos d'Água, da gigante Conceição Evaristo. Com a sua prosa poética e visceral, ela dá voz a histórias de sofrimento e resistência.
O TikTok esse ano fez milhões de pessoas voltarem a ler. Um simples TikTok pode gerar um grande impacto. Descubra livros incríveis e muito mais no TikTok.
Quanto mais você ouve podcasts, mais aprende sobre o mundo. É a prova de que a experiência é o que nos faz mais fortes. E esse é também o princípio da Ford, para criar as picapes com DNA raça forte, que valorizam cada quilômetro rodado e que constroem um verdadeiro legado. Essa é a nossa força. Paz no trânsito começa por você.
All right, so my headline this week is a little out there, guys. Quite literally, Lizzie Acker from the Oregonian wrote about the mysterious lights that multiple pilots reported seeing to air traffic controllers while flying over our state. We know because of leaked cabin audio that on the evening of Saturday, December 7th, pilots flying somewhere over Eugene reported strange red circular lights zipping around the sky. Now, one pilot said he saw about 3 to 4 lights at all altitudes going up and down, which he remarked, it's pretty crazy. Which, I don't know if you've heard pilot tape, but this is what they sound like when their plane is going down. Mayday, mayday, problem, blah, 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 da-da-da. Like, they're so
calm.
Yeah.
It's disorienting.
So for a pilot to be like, it's pretty crazy, and to hear that tension in their voice was like, whoa, so he reported that they were shooting way up into the range of 50,000 feet, which is very high up to shoot really up that quickly, Another pilot a few minutes later checked in with air traffic control and described a red light moving in a corkscrew pattern, which is very unusual to see up there, And then he had settled when they're like, well, what is it? Tell us. He's like, well, it actually may be an aircraft strobe. But then he saw another one come up and he was like, wait, one just shot up next to it. And he's like, and this new light, and this is a direct quote. He said, and this new light is zipping towards us and back out towards the ocean, red in color, moving at extreme speeds. I don't even know how to describe it. So you can hear the air traffic controller say, well, you are clear to maneuver as necessary left and right to avoid the UFO out there. When they say UFO, they mean that in the most technical terms. So the FAA confirmed at least one of the sightings and said it was most likely Starlink satellites. Now, there's no way Starlink satellites are moving that erratically,
And why would they be that low?
Yeah. So before I share what experts are saying, what do you guys think?
Aliens, of course. Duh.
I just chalk it up to the Pacific Northwest tradition of unexplained phenomena, of the treasure at Neocani Mountain and Sasquatch and D.B. Cooper. And, we love ourselves a good unexplained phenomena out here.
And some of the earliest documented UFO sightings happened in Oregon. I mean, we literally have a UFO festival in McMinnville, of all places, every year. Because, this kind of stuff just happens out here. The West is a weird place.
If you've never been to that UFO festival,
amazing.
I feel like this is the year to go, or I guess next year is the year to go because they have a lot of fodder now. This is huge.
There's recent stuff. Between this and the drones happening out east, there's a lot going on right now. And you have never seen a parade until you've seen the UFO festival parade. It is wild.
So Tim Gallaudet, and I hope I'm saying that right, he's a retired Rear Admiral in the U.S. Navy who testified last month before Congress about government transparency when it comes to, UFOs, essentially. So he immediately dismissed the Starlink explanation, and he said something that I was just like, yeah. Basically, he said, most pilots who see Starlink know they're seeing Starlink. They're not going to call an air traffic controller to talk about a Starlink satellite, And one of them, when describing the direction of the light, he said something that caught my ear. He was like, he looks like he's moving towards us. And then he quickly corrected himself and said, it looks like it's moving towards the north.
That's creepy.
Yeah, that's when I heard the pilot do that, I was like, ooh, because that means the pilot immediately was like, that's not a person, that's a thing. I don't know what it is. So officially, there's been no real explanation aside from the FAA conjecturing that it was Starlink. And, like you said, Bryan, about the New Jersey drones, at least we know they were drones.
Right. We know what they are. We may not know who's doing them, but we know what they are.
And also, the only reason we even know about this incident is because someone leaked the tape.
That's a thing that's really interesting. There's been a lot of congressional hearings in recent years about UFOs or UAPs, which is what the government officially refers to these as. It's been interesting to see how much data and information they actually have at the federal level about incidents like this that they just don't talk about, which I can't help but believe actually leads to some of the wild speculation around this stuff because you're up in high altitude, light refracts differently up there and stuff. There could be things like that going on. But it's the government secrecy around it just breeds conspiracies and breeds fear.
So I've been rewatching the X-Files. This is literally the plot of the second episode of X-Files, where Seth Green, as like a little stoner UFO chaser, comes out and directs Scully and Mulder to these lights zigzagging in the sky that they're like, it can't be a plane. They like talk to a pilot. The pilot's like, there's no way that this could be a person who's flying that because it's moving this way, that way. It's like exactly the same thing. So...
And what happened then?
Mulder got like really into it and decided to infiltrate the base where it was happening and went into the base and they abducted him. And then Scully had to like show up at the base and be like, bring Mulder back. And then he came back and that was the end of the episode. Oh. So I think that's what's happening here.
We're walking away from... walking away from whatever we were talking about. But I will say, just to walk us away a little further, I used to go to this gym class called Body Pump. Which, by the way, excellent full body workout. And the instructor was an air traffic controller. Like, she just did the class for fun. And I'm so bummed I no longer go to this gym class because she's got teeth. There's no way air traffic controllers are not talking to each other. There's no way, especially the Eugene, or wherever these air traffic controllers are, they're just like so excited.
Yeah, it's got to be a mostly boring job if everything's going right. So this has to be like, I don't know, sort of like their Super Bowl. There's something strange going on up in the air. And...
Yeah. So if anyone knows the instructor I'm talking about, because I feel like if you do take Body Pump, you would know who I'm talking about. Ask her. And then email us.
And tell us. Be our mole.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you guys, let's take a quick break here. And when we come back, more headlines of the week.
Tem momento na carreira que precisamos dar passo além. É hora de fazer uma pós-graduação. Só que muitas vezes o custo pesa no bolso, inviabilizando tudo. Com a pós-graduação do Senac, você não tem esse problema. Cursos com até 50% de desconto e muito mais tempo para pagar. TCC opcional, modelo flexível com aulas presenciais e online e alguns cursos com apenas 12 meses de duração. Não tem mais desculpa, hein? Saiba mais em sp.senac.br/pós-graduação.
Esse podcast é um oferecimento de Samsung Galaxy AI. E sabe o que mais ele te oferece? Que tal uma nova maneira de buscar na internet a partir de fotos ou do que está na sua tela? Fácil, fácil. Viu? Circulou? Encontrou. Ou quem sabe um assistente de notas para gravar reuniões, transcrever gravações e organizar, produzindo resumos eficientes. Tem tanta coisa que o Samsung Galaxy AI pode fazer por você. Clique aí no banner para descobrir o que. Galaxy AI, a inteligência artificial nas suas mãos.
Okay, John, what caught your eye this week?
Yeah, I'm looking at some great reporting by Shane Dixon Kavanaugh over at the Oregonian about the just shitstorm of accusations that are flying around at Portland's small donor elections program. This is a big deal. I mean, because this is the program that has funded like virtually all of the candidates in our past election. It allows these candidates to get public money to run their campaigns. Well, Daniel Lukow, who was the deputy director of the election program, he quit really abruptly last month and sent like a pretty scathing memo accusing his boss, Susan Motet, of fostering a toxic work environment. And since then, the two have just been sort of like spitting back and forth, accusing one another of like being responsible for all of these problems at this tiny but like important program at the city. So Lukow has said that his boss, Susan Motet, had berated and belittled him to the point where they had to begin recording their one-on-one meetings. But like even putting aside the sort of like question of like two people not getting along in the office, he also said that there were all these leadership mistakes that led to complaints about payment delays and like other big administrative hiccups, and that this department failed to take on additional staff as what we knew was going to be a really big and transformative election year was ramping up. Lukow did provide emails from candidates being like, hey, where's the money that I need from this program to run my election? So it's a real question of like whether this program has been mismanaged and who is responsible for it. Motet, in her case, sort of clapped back and called Lukow basically a disgruntled worker who was bad at his job and blamed all of these struggles on his productivity.
No, red flag,
so
red
the
flag.
two of them are just sort of pointing fingers at each other. But in the meantime, it is a real question of like, well, what is going on here? Who's responsible for it?
Sounds like a great reality TV show. Like,
just getting more
like,
niche.
The Real World Portland small donor election program.
It's pretty brilliant, Bryan.
But it does feel like our city government agencies, bureaus are literally an 8th grade classroom with just a ton of bickering and infighting and no real person who has charge of the room, which it seems like maybe is the case here. And this actually explains a lot of the problems that we've been seeing publicly with the fund. So
yeah. So what I don't understand is, especially in government, and I'm probably like, I'm going to say something, I was going to be like, yeah, I know. But when a department is struggling, they never seem to look at who's in charge of the department.
Yeah.
You know, they never look at like the boss or like when whatever is underperforming, it's rarely the workers. You know, the workers are literally just doing what they're told or trying to exist in a world that is created for them and trying to do their job or not do their job because of the world that is created for them, you know? So that's all I'm saying. And it's always confusing to me, especially in local city government where they're just like, this isn't working. It's like, well, let's find who the fuck is running it then?
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that does sort of come through in the piece a little bit because, you know, this isn't a sprawling bureaucracy. Like the program is the two of them. And one of the things that the reporting says is that like with this change of government that's going on, they've been being shuffled to different administrative units within the city. So like, yeah, I mean, part of what it suggests is that the responsibility for this program has been moving around from like administrator to administrator, and no one's sort of been in charge of it in an overarching way.
Also, I just gotta say, like, as a leader, it doesn't matter if someone badmouths you in public. Like, take the higher road. Don't clap back that way. Like, that doesn't inspire confidence in your leadership ability and does make me start to question, clearly they did not have a good working dynamic.
Yeah.
And it does take two to tango, so it can't all be him.
Yeah. And like, I think it's easy to sort of look at the back and forth and be like, ooh, they're fighting. But like, there are substantive issues here of like how this program is being run. Like, there is a pool of money that this program puts out that candidates can rely on to run their campaigns. And they had to like slash that by a lot because there was this surge of new candidates, which we could totally have anticipated that like with this big new election, there's going to be a lot more candidates. There's going to be a lot more of a demand for money. You know, that wasn't addressed. That's an issue. It's like, wait, how did this sort of come to an 11th hour thing where this money was not going to be able to be distributed? And on the other end, the question of like how quickly things are being certified, how quickly like these votes are being ratified and the money is being put out. There's like a pretty scathing email from one of the city council candidates about being like, I need to make financial decisions right now, and this delay is like potentially killing my campaign. It's just on a just like administrative level, it's just something that can't happen.
Yeah.
It also
I do want to say real quick, Bryan.
Yeah.
You said it takes two to tango, but I have confirmed evidence that actually it could possibly just take one to tango.
Really?
I'm just saying in workplaces, I've actually seen it. You know, when one person has an issue with everyone in the office,
they're usually the common denominator.
After a while, you're like, is it that person? You know what I mean? Okay,
I'm glad you said that because like, I think a leader takes a bigger share of the responsibility here. Like ultimately, you are responsible for setting the tone of the workplace, for advocating for your employees' needs. And it does seem like maybe a big thing here is like there should be more than 2 people working on this. And a failure to recognize that and strongly advocate for that. And I understand that like the city council ultimately decides how much money they get, how much resources they get. But like managing up is a real thing. And it seems like maybe there's a lack of skill in terms of managing up here that is sabotaging this fund.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my sort of final take on this is like, if there ever were a city department that could afford a nice, good audit, I would like to reach out to our city auditor and say, Portland Elections Commission 2025 audit. I would love to see you get in there and figure out what the heck is going on.
With a camera crew, please.
Yes.
Yeah, get in there, girl.
That'd also be a good reality show.
I would love to see a reality show about an audit.
Oh my God. Yeah, I could already see the zoom-ins.
Just like some random line in a document. Like
There's going to need to be more like sunglasses reveals, though, that might happen.
Oh, they're just wearing sunglasses?
Then take them off and say, like, You've been audited.
All right, you guys. It seems we've solved this problem.
Case closed.
Case closed.
Well, you guys, thanks for hanging out with me. Before we head out, I just wanted to thank everyone who became a member last week and also everyone who didn't and still had to listen through all those pitches. I've been that person, and we all feel your pain.
If you're still here, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
You haven't given
Thank
up
you.
on us.
John is sending those bags. They're in the mail, right? The tote bags?
Yeah, I was still weaving the canvas fabrics for the bags themselves in my basement workshop.
Did you grow the cotton too?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you have Christmas off, so, get to it.
Yeah. I mean, we're taking a couple of days off from the show to be with our families, a little bit of a CityCast holiday break, but we still have new episodes coming for you over the next week and a half. We've got 3 more episodes coming out, some of our favorite episodes on winter activities. So keep an ear out for those, and we will be back with fresh episodes on January 2nd. Is the plan.
Yeah. I hope everyone has a good set of holidays. Thank you so much for listening. And I feel like this was one of the biggest years for our show, the biggest amount of growth. And it was all thanks to people who listen and share the show and email us and tell us how much they're enjoying it. It really does motivate us and keep us going. So thank you. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, you guys.
That's all for today here on CityCast Portland. Thank you so much for listening. Our executive producer is John Notarianni. Our producers this week were Julia Fiaioni and Francisco Kilgore. Our Hey Portland newsletter editors were Rachel Monahan and Adrian Gonzalez. Our host is me, Claudia Meza. Original music by Jenny Conley and Steven Drizos. Additional music by Epidemic Sound and All the Kimonos. We'll be back Monday morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.